I waited for better circumstances to make a video, but if one waits for the perfect circumstances, one can never make a video. There is one more thing. I've promised several people that I will get an extra microphone, but I discovered that on my camera there is no opening for another microphone to be switched in, so I will have to do with the inbuilt microphone in the camera. I will only have to talk louder. I assume that Marx is not studied in schools in Western Europe or America. Probably economic students study it, Marxist theory. I noticed that there is some, not great, but some interest in my Karl Marx videos, more than for my other videos, especially the Karl Marx's theory of economics. There is not one general economics law for all times, for every socio-economic order through history. So I should have said my videos on Marxist theory of capitalist economy, because Marxist theory is not pure economics. That's Marx's contribution. He discovered that the means of production are born in and develop in the old socio-economic order. They come into contradiction with the mode of production and with the overall socio-economic order, and many times through revolution a new social order is born. So Marx involves himself especially with the economics of capitalism. The fundamental process in capitalism is exchange of goods. Goods are exchanged for equal value. In the totality of the exchange process, it has to be assumed that goods are exchanged for their equal values. I will be repeating some things from my other videos, but they bear repeating and they can be said in many ways. Things in general and commodities have use value. They have to answer some needs, and needs change and grow through time. For example, a peasant in feudal times wouldn't need a mobile phone. He didn't even know what that is. Needs are created in the mind. So commodities have use value. They have to answer some need. They have to be useful for something. Use value is independent of the labor put into the commodity and from the exchange value of the commodity. But there is another value to the commodity which serves the exchange process, and that is the exchange value. For what value is the commodity exchanged? And it is assumed that in the totality of the exchange process, the commodities are exchanged for equal value. There must be found a standard for exchange. Where does exchange value come from? If we look at the commodity, it is created in the labor process. The labor process consists of raw materials, what is worked on, the labor, and the tools, instruments, machinery through which the worker works on the raw materials and creates the commodity and produces the commodity. The raw materials don't import any value, neither do tools or instruments. They are the same, but value is produced, created by labor. So this is what creates exchange value, the labor of people, the living labor. So goods are exchanged all the time, and there is one equivalent standard that is used for exchange, and that is money. With money comes price. Price can vary from value, but in the totality of the exchange process, it must be assumed that price equals total price equals total value. If a commodity is exchanged, sold for money, and then that money is used to buy another commodity, CMC. For example, a peasant sells his wheat for money and then buys boots because he needs the boots. You have CMC. It starts with commodity, money, and finishes with commodity. Here, the use value of the commodities is important because the first seller doesn't need the use value of his commodity, so he finds somebody who needs this use value, this commodity, to sell it. He gets money, and with that money he buys another commodity which he needs, boots, for example. So you start with commodity, money, boots. In the capitalist exchange process, it's money, commodity, money. People buy commodities with money and then sell these commodities for money. You have MCM. This process is constantly done, buying in order to sell. So you have MCM, but you start with money and you finish with money, and money is the same. If you get the same amount of money, this process is nonsensical. Why do people do it? Because they buy things in order to sell, in order to get more money. So you have MCM plus something, M1 for example. And then they use that money to do the same transformation. Again, MCM11 to get more money. But if you look at that, where does this surplus amount of money, where does this surplus value come from? It cannot come from the money. Money is the same. So it doesn't come from M, it comes from C, from the commodity. With money, the capitalist buys things necessary for the labor process in order to produce more commodities which he wants to sell to get more money and to get surplus money from more money from the money he has spent. In order to produce commodities, he buys the means of production, tools, machinery, instruments, raw materials, and he pays workers to do the labor process and to produce commodities which after that he will sell. And there the surplus value is created, because in the capitalist society there must exist people who are free in a double sense. They must be free from ownership of means of production. They must not be able to produce commodities themselves, to make things for themselves. And they must be free legally to be able to sell their labor. But Marx discovered that workers don't sell their labor. They haven't produced anything yet. They haven't expended any labor. What they sell is their labor capacity, their labor power, their capacity for labor. It is, as in all exchange processes in capitalist society, it is an equal exchange, because the value of the capacity for labor is the goods that are necessary to maintain this capacity for labor, to keep the worker alive and his family, so that he produces other workers for the future. So in the contract, during the time for which the capitalist pays the worker to work, he sells his capacity for labor, and part of this time is used to create the value of the things that he will need to maintain his life. So he has got what he wanted. He has got the value of his labor power. Labor power here turns into a commodity, and so it happens that the capitalist buys this capacity for labor. This is his commodity now, and he uses it in the working day, and during the working day, part of the time the worker produces the value of the commodity that he has sold, so it is an equal exchange, and the capitalist uses the rest of the worker's labor to create surplus value, because the worker, after he creates the value of his labor capacity, labor power, sorry, because the worker works part of the time to create the value equal to his labor power, and the rest of the time the value that he creates is a surplus value, which the capitalist uses because the commodities produced, part of their value is the value that he has paid for the wages that he has paid the worker, but the rest of the value is surplus value, and when the capitalist sells the commodities, he gets surplus money. Money, this M, is the beginning of capital. So after this process, after the labor process, after the capitalist has bought the raw materials, labor power, and instruments, machinery, and sells them, then he gets more money, and this surplus money is added to the capital that he started with. In this way, accumulation of capital happens, and capital is used only for making more money, more capital. So here it is interesting to note that this commodity, labor power, is a special kind of commodity because it is used to produce value, the value of itself, but also it can be used to make more value, which is then appropriated by the capitalist. So this is a strange thing that is happening in the capitalist mode of production. It happens that in an equal exchange of commodities, the commodity labor power creates a surplus value that is appropriated. It belongs to the capitalist because he has paid for this labor power, for maintaining the labor power for the day. And the surplus value that is produced by this labor power belongs to the capitalist, which then he turns to more capital.